Hey D&D fam, I'm Quick.
And I'm Lee, and you're listening to
Divas and Ducats. So what is a diva? I think divas get a bad rep, but to me, diva is all about the attitude.
As for ducats, it's your finances, your assets, Skrilla, guap, your coin. We're talking all things with the potential to affect your pockets.
And while we're attorneys by trade, we are divas by choice. Divas and Ducats is for edutainment purposes.
Y'all, we are not Series 511 or 703 professionals. This does not create a financial advisor
Nope.
or attorney-client relationship. The views expressed here are solely our opinions and the opinions of our guests.
It's just our opinion, y'all. Okay, divas, let's talk Ducats.
Hey D&D fam, welcome back. We are glad you're here with us today. We have an exciting topic on our Diva docket. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about Wanderlust, the traveling. It's the season to get out and go, and Lord knows I need a vacation right now, as they say in the country. So.
Right. So
timely.
Yes. So we have one of my favorites. She has planned several trips for me, my family. She's simplified it because, groups get to ask her questions. And we love her, so we brought her on here. And so first, we wanted to say, if you're watching, make sure you click subscribe below. And you can go to divasandducats.com and sign up and know when future episodes are available coming out. Yes. But now, let's get into it. So our guest is Wanda Thomas of Too Busy Not to Travel. And so welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So we'll just get right into it. So just tell us who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. Well, let's see. How would I start? Well, like a number of women out there these days, that would be in my age range. I am a 55-year-old, slightly imperfect lady out here in this world of crazy. I am a God-fearing individual that loves to live life. I've experienced life on a number of different levels. As most women, especially minority women, I have lived through many successes, failures, heartbreaks, pains, aches, you name it. Hard-fought accomplishments and non-recognized accomplishments, all the above.
Yeah.
Just that's who I am. That I'm just living life every day, trying to live it the best way I can. I am a native New Yorker, originally from Brooklyn, New York. However, I am raised in the South, so I'm a Southern girl.
Come on, Grit.
That's right, I'm Grit. I was raised with my grandma. So as they told me recently in a presentation I gave, it's like, you don't have a Northern accent. I said, no, I've been in the South for a long time.
Right.
So I'm a Southern girl. I'm definitely a Southern girl. But I mean, that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Okay, so how did you go about forming, what made you decide to get into the travel industry and form Too Busy Not to Travel?
And I love the name, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Since you said that, let me start there. The name Too Busy Not to Travel came about very interestingly. I was in a previous relationship, and as independent women that we are, we have so many things going on, etc. And it was often said, my God, you're always about business. Do you ever relax? Do you ever calm down? Business. And you're always on the go. You got too much going on. You don't have time for a relationship, blah, 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 blah. And so you're just too busy. And so that's kind of where it came from was, somebody made that comment, and I got the first I was irritated. Then after that I went, you know what? I am too busy. That's true. I'm too busy. I've got so much going on. I'm always into something new. I'm an explorer. I'm a discoverer. And so with that said, it kind of stuck. And I was like, as you think about our world, it's 24/7. We're all turning faster than we can move. We can't think anymore. You're connected and plugged in 24/7. The cell phone is with you. You can't move without the cell phone. You go in the bathroom, you got the cell phone. You don't have any downtime as far as it's concerned. So, that's our world. And it's gotten to the point that prioritization is very hard with all the things that are on our list. And so in my thought process, as a professional, I figured, well, if I'm feeling this way, if I'm trying to juggle a million things, then I'm sure a lot of other women are doing the same thing.
Right.
Even as I think back, to my mom and, trying to raise myself and my brother and, work and do the things she was doing and get us to sports and this, that, and the other, she was always juggling a million things too.
Right.
And so being too busy was not a bad thing. It was just what it was.
Right.
And what it is, you got it. What it was and what it is, you got it. And so from that standpoint, I said, well, let's look at this from the standpoint of how can I provide service to that slightly imperfect woman that is truly too busy. She's got too many things going on. I think as Leandra said about me planning trips for them, it's a headache when you got to sit on a phone and wait for somebody to answer the phone, and if they answer the phone, and then they disconnect the phone after you get them on the phone after you've waited, etc. And you got too many other things that you need to be doing. You've searched and searched for this particular journey, etc. During your lunch hour at work, or every little time you can get, let me see if I can find the best deal, so forth and so on. And so I was like, well, let me take that off your hands. Let me be your concierge, as it were. As I said earlier, as a busy woman in the world that we live in, I've got a very eclectic background. I've always been an explorer, always been a discoverer. And my background has I've done office administrative work, I've done hospitality and tourism, I've done customer service, retail sales, education and training, finance, project management, IT. I've done a little bit of everything. It's like a running joke in my family because it's like, where haven't you worked?
Right. What industry have you not been in?
I've been in all kinds of industries, but it's been a positive. The positive is that it's given me a different look on the world, a different view about how things work and how I can provide the best service to those individuals that have been moving faster than light, as it were. And so I came into travel really based on the concept of we are too busy, but we should never be too busy to pamper ourselves and take care of ourselves.
Right.
And so I say that now, and it's been definitely a journey. But in 2003, I had a life health issue that put me closer to death than I wanted to be. And it came about again later on in a couple more years. And it became a point when you realize, you say, well, here I am laying in this hospital. And how many people from my office have actually come to see how I'm doing? And you start to think about, well, wait a minute. Am I just a number? Of course, we all think, especially when you're an overachiever, we all think the world can't revolve without us. If we're not there, it's going to fall apart. Well, I realized during that time when people didn't come check on me, et cetera, that in essence, I was dispendable. It was just like, if I'm not there, no problem. We'll just bring somebody else in.
Right.
And so I think a lot of us are in that particular position, and definitely as women, because I think as women, we work doubly hard to prove ourselves in the world because, we still have people in this work environment that would rather look at us and say, don't you have some kids to be home taken care of, or shouldn't we be home cooking for the man, or whatever the case may be. And so with that said, it was like, I need to find something that makes me truly happy and allows me to live life, because life is too short. And truly during that health scare, that's when I started making a plan. And I think that's what it's all about. I think as y'all talk about, the ducats and making plans with your wealth, et cetera. It's about making a plan. And so I decided at that point, let's start making a change. I've been in finance for 30 plus years. And so I've been in banking for so long, and just like any profession, there's stressors that go along with that.
Right.
And I just sat down and said, let's make a plan to get there. And so, long story short, from taking it from the corporate world, I then decided, by the suggestion of a family member, to look into the travel industry, because I traveled a lot in my current industry in finance and love to travel, have no kids, just have a little dog, so it was very easy for me to go.
Yeah.
And so that was something I was very passionate about, going. And so I looked into it, and then I loved what I saw. And then in 2015, Too Busy Not to Travel was born, and it just stuck, and it's been a whirlwind. It's been about 7 years now. Been loving every moment of it. I love putting trips together, and more importantly, I love escorting trips, groups of people, because I usually focus on women over 40 is my normal focus when it comes to my groups. One of my criteria or requirements, if you would, to travel with me, you got to be a fun-loving, open individual. I don't want no drama and no mess, and so really, honestly, with every group, I have a statement that I say with every group.
Cool.
I start off with, let's make this clear, I have no children. Then I pause and I say, understand what that means? I have no children. My demographic and what I deal with is mostly 40 plus individuals. So I'm looking for adults to travel with me that are self-sufficient. And so from that standpoint, I make it clear, setting those expectations up front, how we run business, but it is about having fun and being open-minded and objective to experience whatever comes in that particular piece. And today in travel, you really do have to have an open mind. There's just so much going on in the travel world that you kind of have to pack your patience from that standpoint. So, but that's how I got into it, and it's been great. It is great.
So what is the difference? Because you're a travel agent, and I've heard of the term travel advisor. What is the difference between the two, if there is a difference?
That's an excellent question. I can tell you that in 2018, the American Society of Travel Associations decided to change the name to advisor versus agent. Agent has been there forever. The thought process is that just like with any profession, roles evolve. Our responsibilities and duties evolve. And so from the standpoint of a travel agent, I think most people have the concept that, well, I can go online, click a button and make, my order, if it were, and go on a trip. Well, that's true. And so in some regards, people thought of an online travel agent and a personal travel agent all in one and the same. And in all honesty, as an advisor, as a consultant, et cetera, it's not just about the transaction. It's about the relationship. It's about the service we're able to provide, the expertise we're able to impart upon our clients, the things that we're able to help save money, save time, save your patience and your sanity, and make it easy for you. And so advisor came about in the form of the fact that we do more than just a transaction. It's not just clicking a button and making a reservation for you, as it were. We take it full-fledged. We have payment plans. We can also match prices from that standpoint. So it's about the relationship. It's not just about a transaction. And so they are one and the same, but at the same time, they are not the same. So it's really about semantics and about how you think about it. But as a travel advisor, a travel consultant, we have if you would, a fiduciary responsibility to our clients to always keep their desires, their needs at the forefront, and to really operate in their best interest. So that's pretty much where it came from.
Got you. And that's an interesting point. You mentioned saving money and being able to save. And I think a lot of people have maybe the thought process that using an agent actually, they cost more money. So, or an advisor rather, it costs more money. So maybe talk to what are some of the benefits to using a travel advisor. And I mean, are you putting out more money than if you just went on Expedia by yourself?
That's a good question. Now, I'm going to answer that a couple different ways, because it depends on what you're looking for and what your flavor is. As I have told people before, if you are comfortable with a hostel as an example. You don't care what the digs look like. You just want to get where you want to go to. You want to be able to check off and say, I've been there.
Right.
And I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to do anything. I don't care about any of that. I'm maybe living out a backpack. Then do I need a travel agent, a travel advisor? Probably not. You know, that's go to Expedia, click it and go. So from that standpoint, are we going to save you any money when you're that type of traveler? Probably not, because you're looking for the cheapest option, not the best option. You're not considering your safety, your security. You're not worried about, am I getting my money back if there's a problem? If I get sick, is somebody going to take care of me? None of that are you worried about. So as an advisor, in all honesty, you have a couple of different levels depending on what your desire is. So as an example, if you are a normal cruiser, and I'll use that as an example, if you like to cruise and you've gone out to Carnival yourself already as an example, and you found the perfect cruise, and this is what I want to book, we can book it for exactly what you see it for online, exactly what you want. You want an interior cabin, ocean view, whatever the case may be. Just like you would click it, we would click it. What a lot of people don't realize is no matter whether you are doing it yourself online or doing it with me as a travel advisor, you're still dealing with the travel advisor. You may not realize that when you're on that laptop, there's somebody behind the scenes that's closing the deal. So even when you click it on carnival.com as an example, there's an agent behind the scenes that's actually doing all that work that comes with it, such as pulling the documentation, making sure you have a passport, it's been filled in, all of that stuff. Somebody's back there doing that. But the thing is, in most of those cases, you're paying for a service, but you're not getting any service. Because if you think about it, in those situations, as an example, you generally get a communication that says, when you're ready to complete your details about your passport, etc., go to this website, plug in this information. Then it comes back and says, you need the following documents when you get here. So make sure you print XYZ, so forth and so on. Nobody's really giving you service. If you're going through and you're like, oh, I got a question. What does this really mean? What are they really asking me? Oh, travel insurance. What do I know about this? Well, what does it really cover? Well, they're not going to, that laptop's not going to answer any of that for you. You know? And so coming to a travel advisor, we give you so many things as we talk about saving money, saving time. So back to your original question, yes, we save you money and we're not more expensive because, number one, if it is a matter of price matching, we generally can do that if all you want is a transaction. So make that clear. If you want a full service, for instance, at Too Busy Not to Travel, we do a full service. It's not just about the transaction. When you come on board, you begin to get communications from us from the very beginning about how we do business. Here are our terms and conditions. Here is what we provide to you, etc. From that particular step, we make sure to reach out to you. What questions do you have? How can we facilitate your knowledge in regards to where you're going? If you're going to a country that you've never been to, we're facilitating, making sure you know what those true entry requirements are. Some people don't realize if I'm going somewhere and I have to have a passport, you need to have at least 2 blank pages in that passport book, and a lot of people don't realize that. So you do need to have that. Also, that passport needs to be at least open for 6 months after your return trip. So if you're going on a trip in June and your passport expires in December, you really need to have that passport renewed before you even book that trip. Because again, it needs to be valid for 6 months after you return from your particular trip. So to your original question, yes, we save you money because if you did not know these particular things, if you get into a situation where you did not have the appropriate documents, I can use a prime example. During COVID, there was a couple that flew to Hawaii. They booked everything themselves. And during COVID, Hawaii had some very strict requirements of entry. They flew all the way to Hawaii for their trip, did not follow the correct processes to get into Hawaii, got there and literally was denied entry into Hawaii at immigrations and was turned around. They were losing their money for their hotel, they were losing money for their flight, and had to immediately turn around and come back on that same flight. Because they did not use an advisor that we're in it every day, just like attorneys, you're in it every day. Like doctors, you're in it every day.
Right.
When you're seeing it and a part of it every day, it's things that are just right there at the top of your head because you've heard it, you've seen it, you've done it, whatever the case may be. And when you're not in that environment and you think, I got this, it's not that easy, especially not that easy anymore with all the requirements that are out there now based on the things that we have been going through. So we're definitely saving you some money and saving you a headache from that standpoint.
Yeah, and it made me think it wasn't a COVID thing, but I just remember going to, I think it was like Brazil, and they required a visa outside of your passport. And when I tell you I went through so much to get the picture of me in the right angle, it was a lot. Like it had to be a certain size, it had to be a certain, and that was like a separate trip or whatever. But just the headache of that, like if someone else was just like, girl, this is how you do this. Like, I'm going to make this real easy for this to fit. But I went back and forth with Brazil about 5 times before they took my picture. And then luckily, like you said, you read the email and you like, let me follow directions because I'm type A. I'm like, you're not going to turn me around. And I'd have been like, but I luckily went to like the Brazil with like the embassy site to know that. But it's like, it's not like when you book something, they tell you, like you have to go looking for it. So, but speaking of COVID, like what should people be doing or researching in terms of preparing for their trips now that, I mean, I know the world is moving on like COVID is gone, but it's still here. Most countries still have some kind of requirement. So what should people kind of be thinking about in terms of if they're going outside the country?
The first comment, get an advisor. That would be my first comment. Call too busy not to travel. That's what my comment would be.
I hear that.
But more specifically, as you mentioned, going to those particular governmental websites, travel.state.gov as one main one that you can go to, has a wealth of information about entry requirements, etc., for the different countries that you may be traveling to. They have a special section that's about COVID and what the COVID requirements are. Now, the caveat, however, is these websites are not always updated on a regular basis or as quickly as things change. Because as we've all seen with COVID, literally by the second things change. Literally by the second. As an example, last week we were in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and during that particular time, Dubai and Abu Dhabi had a difference in their requirements. Dubai got to a point where you no longer had to wear a mask in public, but Abu Dhabi still was requiring that mask to be worn in public. So if you're thinking UAE is UAE and I'm going from here to there and it's the same, it's not. Different places are different, as well as even within those areas, there are differences for it. So as an example, when we left Dubai, we had to get another PCR test just to get into Abu Dhabi. It's only an hour and a half away, but we had to do another PCR test just to get into Abu Dhabi. Once we got into Abu Dhabi, when we went to the mosque required your vaccination cards. Then from the mosque for vaccination cards, we went to a mall. The mall required that you either had a vaccination card and or you had a PCR test that had been taken within the last 24 hours for you to enter the mall. So you got destination requirements, but then within the destination, there are requirements to enter things like your museums, your mosques, your so forth and so on that you may not be aware of. And on travel.state.gov, it's not going to tell you that. It may tell you the basics of a PCR test is required, but it does not break it down but yet if you go 50 feet, then you're going to have to do such and such. Or if you go to this museum, you're going to have such and such. It doesn't do any of that. So truly, I just about it, but it is true that you really need to talk with a professional in the industry, because we are being briefed on it every day, almost every second of the day. We've got a million Facebook groups that we are a part of. We are a part of all these tourism boards. We've got tourism contacts of them, so on. And a lot of times we get that information so much quicker. They will contact us and let us know from a tourism board standpoint, this just changed. You're not going to see it on any website. You're not going to see it on anything, but we want you to know that this is what we've just done, et cetera. So it's a tricky situation in travel right now with COVID and everything that's going on with all the different requirements. So truly, call too busy not to travel.
And you mentioned, you were in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, like I was in, Tennessee or something, but let's get into that.
Went down the street,
right. How are you able to travel so much, while working? And I know for, no, I'm not going to say that. I was about to say, I know for entrepreneurs, sometimes it's easy to do your schedule, but sometimes it's not, because usually as entrepreneurs and business owners, you're everything, right?
Yes, you are.
So it's not like 4 weeks of PTO at the beginning and you use it when you want to.
Right.
It's a different story. So how are you able to find flexibility? What would you recommend for someone that's trying to find that flexibility for travel, while you're working?
Well, as I said earlier about just making plans, planning ahead, being very organized is key. Yeah. I have, I think, 5 different calendars, in all honesty, that I use, that I'm always putting stuff on different calendars. But I'm a very organized person, and organization is really a big key to it, because I can look at my calendar and plan ahead and realize, as an example, if I'm booking a trip for Leandra, I put it immediately in my calendar. This is when the final payment's due for this particular traveler, et cetera.
Right.
Here's what I've got to do for this. I've got to make sure this is happening within this particular amount of time based on when they're traveling, et cetera. So a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm very organized. The second part is I'm a very technological person. I love technology. I work in IT as well. I do consulting work in the bank and project management IT. And so IT is my thing. So I use a lot of automation. I do, for instance, a lot of the emails and things that go out to my clients are automated.
Right.
I've created, a series that I know that these are things people will ask or things they need to be aware of, whatever that may be, and they go out on a time schedule. So I use a lot of automation from that standpoint as well. I also have a great support group, and the people that I work with, I have a, just like you have your best girlfriends, I got my best travel agent friends, that if literally something is an emergency, I've got people I can call and they will step in. I can remember recently, one of my clients wanted something pretty quickly, and I was in the middle of preparing for this group for Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and really didn't have the time. And I knew another agent that really specialized in this area, because what the person was asking about was something I don't do a lot of. And I reached directly out to them and said, look, one of my top clients needs XYZ. I need some help. Who can help me? Within a matter of minutes, they had pulled the information together for me and provided what I needed so that I could then turn that over to my client. So a lot of times it is support group, the organization, definitely the automation. I can't say enough about that, because the automation really creates a lot of more efficient time. I'll put it that way. It gives me an ability to have better efficient time, because I'm not, pinpointing every little thing always. It gives me a little bit of a leadway, a gap, if you would, to be doing some other things. And again, kind of staying one step ahead of the process. Right. And when I'm traveling, I will say, my backpack, as people laugh, say, your backpack's heavy. Yeah, it's heavy, because I do carry a laptop. I have an external drive. I have headphones. I have, everything I need from an electronic standpoint goes with me, so that I can at least address things. But I also try to let people know I'm going to be going out of town. That way they know that I'm out of town. I put an out of office message usually as well. People can always text me, WhatsApp me, etc. And I'll tell them, I might not be able to handle this right this moment, but I will be getting back with you within 24 to 48 hours. I do at least try to respond in some way within that 24 to 48 hours. So again, a number of things helps me to continue to do that and to keep that travel going. And that's my forte. I'm a travel advisor.
Right.
Not everybody is a traveling
Right.
travel advisor.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I'll say that in my opinion, there's a plus to dealing with a traveling travel advisor because they are again in it every day and they really know what you're going to face when you're going through your travel challenges. I've had my luggage lost when I'm going on a 7-day cruise. I have no clothes. Been there, done that. I've had people not pick me up where I'm supposed to be picked up from. So I've experienced the things that my clients may experience. So it really makes a difference. Not to mention also that it helps me to be more knowledgeable about the areas that I'm sending my clients to. Again, one of our big things that we push is that the areas that I typically will refer people to, or the resorts I refer them to, I have been there. I've experienced the service. I have contacts in those particular locations. So if something is awry, I usually have somebody I can pick up the phone and call at that particular location to address whatever the challenge is at that particular time. So, all of that goes into play as, kind of taking it back a little bit about what else does a travel advisor provide you, and having those contacts, that awareness, that knowledge of what you might experience helps to calm you down in those situations where you don't experience it all the time. And we're able to okay, take it down a notch. You'll be okay, so forth and so on.
Yeah. And that made me think two things, because Wanda pointed out I have my out of office, like when you reach out, because
I was thinking about
we talked about, we did like the Black business episode. We talked about like a good best practice is, things happen, maybe you're unavailable, but let someone know. Do an out of office. Let them know I got the message, but I'm not in right now. So I thought that was really just cool that you put that out there. But the other thing it made me think about was when we did the episode with Courtney, and how she talked about she contracted to be more flexible. And so just, putting it out there for those people who want to live that life, like contracted, that's part of the flexibility. You can probably research plans in terms of health coverage aspects of things, but if you're in an industry where you can contract to still make good ducats,
And that's an excellent point, because as I said, I still work in the banking IT realm as a consultant. So that contract work can save me as well. That's always, as I tell people, you've got to have your A, B, and C plan. It's not just your A and B, your A, B, and C plan. And so when COVID was, full force and people were traveling quite a bit, I was able to parlay that consulting and contract work, pick up a contract in the banking world, go out there and work for 6 months or whatever until things started coming back, and bring it back. So it's something to subsidize. But to your point, you work those contracts to benefit you. I love consulting. And I remember when I was a regular full-time employee with people, I was like, but you got to be, you can lose your job at any time. They could stop this anytime, or you won't have health insurance, et cetera. All of those are myths because even if you're working full-time for someone as a full-time employee, the truth of the matter is, if you've not been through it before, and I have, they will walk in on a Friday afternoon after you've done all your work for the whole week with a box and say, we're not going to need your services anymore, even though you're a full-time employee. So just like it would happen with a consultant, it can happen with a full-time employee. You do get benefits as a contractor. As you said, work your contract. Make sure you know what you are worth and ask for what you need as well. So, all those things go into play with that. Good points.
And then also when she was talking about automation, we talked about that in our business too. It's like automation allows her to sit here and talk to us, but have a new client reach out to her and be like, welcome to Too Busy Not to Travel.
Thank you for reaching out.
So it's so important in business, especially for small business owners.
Yes.
And you also you mentioned it earlier, like when you were talking about using a travel agent and cancellation policies, right? A person that clicks on Expedia might not necessarily know what a cancellation policy is of a flight, or if it's, a non-refundable flight. Like, might be something they overlook when using it. So do you have cancellation policies yourself for a person that's using your services? And like, how do you let them know about the cancellation policies for the hotel, or do you take care of all of them?
Yes, I do. I have cancellation policies, and I'll answer the latter first. Every time somebody reaches out to me for services, a part of my initial process is to send them an introduction email so that they go to my website, they read about me, number one, to make sure I'm the person for them, because it is a relationship, it's a give and take. And a part of that communication also says, here are my terms and conditions of service. Here are my privacy policies, etc. I want people to know they're dealing with a professional and that they understand the rules, if you would, or the guidelines of doing business together, because it's a partnership. I mean, it's a partnership. So we need to understand what each person wants out of the relationship. And so I give that up front. And in my terms and conditions, there is a section that specifically says about cancellations, about refunds, etc. For Too Busy Not to Travel, generally speaking, our overall arching policy is we do not do refunds. And the reason we don't do refunds is because technically once the money has come to us and we've paid our vendor, 9 times out of 10, we can't get it back from the vendor. I mean, that's just really the bottom line. And so I can't give you what I don't have. So, I mean, that's really a lot of part of it. However, I also have a overall policy, but then I have an exception clause. My exception clause basically says, if there is some extenuating circumstance that we are able to talk about and that we deem, okay, that makes sense, we understand what's going on, as an example, COVID, then we make exceptions. And when we make those exceptions, the only thing that we make clear in those terms and conditions is, in an exception basis, even if we do decide to give a refund of funding, 15% of the services that have been rendered will not be refunded, because of course it takes money to have a business, and it takes money to have the automation we just talked about. It takes money for me to go and get education and to find out what's happening in these different countries for their policies and to have those contacts, et cetera. So 15% covers, if you would, my overhead and administrative costs. So yeah, I do have a policy, and it is definitely upfront for everybody to see from the very beginning, as well as even once we go from me just providing you a quote, when you decide that you're going to do the deal and we're closing the deal, again, you get another copy that says, just a reminder, you might want to go back and look at the terms and conditions and know what you pay for. So yeah, it's there.
It's a reminder.
Here you go.
Per my email.
Right.
So we speak a lot about savings. We're divas and ducats is what we like to do. What are your best, or how do you think people can best ball on a budget in terms of travel? What are some maybe tips?
I look at that background, I'd be like, people be like, I can't afford to do that.
Right.
So I just not gonna travel.
Like, I know one thing, I don't know if it's true or not, but it seems like I heard you should look for flights on Tuesday because they're cheaper. I don't know, but I'm just wondering for the people.
There's so many myths out there. There is so much that's gone on. It's interesting because I can remember when I first got into the business, I had heard the same thing about Tuesday. And I went out searching, et cetera. And there are all these statistics that are out there that you can find that really will kind of say, well, on this day, at this time, at this hour, blah, 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 then this might work. But who has the time to really match it that way?
Right.
However, to your point, one of the things I'll definitely say about flights, to me, a lot of stuff is common sense. You just got to take time to think about it. Think about the fact, as an example, on a Sunday, for a traveling business person, they're probably traveling on Sunday so that they can be in their destination to start work on Monday. Cost is going to be higher typically on Sunday to fly because more business people are flying on Sunday. Same thing on Monday mornings. Flights will probably be higher because business people are flying on Monday mornings. So to some extent, that concept of waiting until Tuesday or Wednesday, that does go into play, because again, by the time you get to those particular points, prices have come down because you don't have as many business people that are flying or people flying in first class. Right. So to some extent, main thing there is, if you look for flights, start during the week as far as a beginning of your trip, as well as a return on your trip. If your trip is to include a weekend, keep in mind, coming back on Sunday, flights are higher. Coming back on Monday, flights are higher. You
Right.
typically probably want to come back on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So going and coming, it does kind of fall into that, and the trend do kind of show that. Most of my clients, I typically will book, especially if it's international, et cetera, I will book them to leave on a Thursday night, coming back probably on either a Monday or a Tuesday, because from an international length standpoint, that works out pretty good. But definitely from a flight standpoint, think about leaving in the middle of the week, coming back in the middle of the week, or the beginning of the week, just not a Sunday or a Monday. I would say that about flights. The other thing I would say about the resorts themselves is, that's a tough one as far as balling on a budget. Like I said, it depends on what kind of traveler you are.
Yeah.
If you're that person that you're not that concerned about where you're sleeping, so forth and so on, then in all honesty, pull it up, click, go. Simple as that. But if you are a person that has a concern about where you're sleeping and that you can sleep, that's an important piece.
If you and me, if you want the experience, I joke with my friends all the time. I like an ambiance. Let's just say it is what it is.
There you go. You got to have an ambiance. I'm with you on that. You got to have an ambiance.
You do.
I mean, I've had a client, as an example, reach out to me and they were like, "Hey, I found this great deal in Cabo. Can you book it for me?" And I'm looking at them like, "Yeah." And I'm like, I looked at the resort and I was like, "I know that resort. That really is a good deal. How they doing it at that price?" I said, "There's got to be something going on." Sure enough, I contacted my business development manager for the property, etc. Come to find out, there was a new resort building next door. And a lot of the rooms where they were building at that particular time, the lights from construction were facing the rooms on that side of the building. And you had noise. So they were given discounted rates for their particular property based on what they knew you were going to face while you were there.
Now, that's why you use an agent.
Right.
There you go. Exactly. Exactly.
You get there
And
and you be hot.
you can go on a budget, but you got to know why is it a budget, and if it makes sense that it is a budget price from that standpoint.
Right.
The two other things I would say about balling on a budget is plan in advance. Last minute just doesn't work. I mean, literally, when you're trying to book a flight at the last minute, the flight prices are going to be ridiculous. I mean, it's very unlikely you're going to find a great deal. Generally, the sweet spot is 45 days out before you plan to travel, kind of is the last sweet spot area of booking a flight. If you can do it earlier, great. But definitely, once you get to that 45 day, between 45 and 30, the prices are already on their way up. So you can kind of forget it. You're not going to get a deal. So plan ahead. The other thing is try to use a travel agent where you can have a payment plan. That would be the other thing. I know some of us love payment plans. So get a travel agent that has payment plans so that you can plan it 2 years ahead. You could be making payments to do that. I'm putting together right now a Maldives trip. And I was looking at the price myself going, whoo, we need some time on that one. So it's going to be out for like a year and a half ahead of time.
Yeah.
So, got to have a payment plan.
Yes. Wow.
So what are some requirements for you? Did we talk about that? Like if someone's trying to become a travel agent, you got into the industry, but like and you also say you take some educational courses. Are there, like, what are the requirements to be certified as a travel agent?
That's a really great question because there's so many avenues for people to get into travel these days, but not all of them are the right avenues. And to be more specific, I remember when I first came aboard, my family member that recommended me to get into the industry, the avenue at the time was a multi-level marketing piece.
Pyramid scheme.
I was like, I went in and I, from the very beginning, said, I don't think this is going to work, because at that particular point, again, to each his own. I know some people make really good money at it, not saying anything's wrong with it, but you got to make sure that the focus is what you need it to be. And so I got into it and realized it was not a focus of teaching anything about the travel industry. It was more about building a team, building people, et cetera, from that standpoint. And therefore, you really weren't learning a lot about the industry, as it were. So one way I would say that may not be, depending on the person, so I don't want to say it's not, but may not be the right direction for you, would be an MLM. But again, it's an avenue. It's definitely an avenue. You just have to make sure your focus is where it needs to be or where you want it to be as far as traveling. In my case, I realized that I wasn't going to get what I really wanted out of it. So I began to search for other avenues to be able to do it. And so as an example, you can come in as an independent. Now, an independent basically says, just like any small business owner, everything, your overhead, your insurance, everything is your responsibility. Or you can come in from the standpoint of being hosted. And if you're hosted, basically what that means is that you're working under the umbrella of an established organization that already has its industry credentials to allow you to book travel using those industry credentials. And basically, if you think about it, it's almost like paying rent. You are going to pay that entity a percentage of your return to be able to use their credentials to do the work that you're trying to do.
Right.
As an independent, however, there are several industry leaders, if you would, for the industry of travel. And CLIA, Cruise Line International, is for cruises. We have ASTA, as I mentioned earlier, American Society for Travel Agents. We also have IATA, which is from the airline side of things. Most travel is booked under either an IATA number or a CLIA number, and then there's some others. There's an ARC, there's a True number, there's a couple other, but the industry standards in most cases from a historical standpoint have been the IATA as well as a CLIA number.
Gotcha.
If you are independent, thinking about qualifications, to get a CLIA or an IATA card, there may be requirements such as you have a certain dollar amount that's already in your business checking account, say 20,000 or more, that you can show that you have some backing, basically, to get those credentials. A lot of people don't come in the door with that. You know, that's kind of like doing a franchise, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So in that case, a lot of people start in a hosted situation where you're under somebody until you can get to that point. Because also, even though you have to have that capital, it also could be a scenario where you have to have a certain level of experience where you've already been booking travel for a certain period of time. And so with that particular situation, you don't have that yet as well. So again, probably under a hosted scenario that you're going to go with from that standpoint. And then you have to have also potentially some references that would come and recommend you to be under those umbrellas. So now once you're working under a hosted, kind of like an apprenticeship, when you're working under a hosted scenario, you're able to build those particular pieces. So when I started, I said I started with MLM. Well, MLM is a hosted, but then I transitioned from that particular umbrella type into a true hosted travel agency, or a travel agency that has sub agents under it. And now I'm at a point where I'm able to actually move out from under that if I so desire, because now I have the credentials, the requirements, if it were, to move forward. Another piece that is not required, but I know that some people have done in the past, there used to be true travel schools, and people went to school to be certified as a travel agent. So that's another avenue. I will tell you that both of the organizations that I mentioned, actually all of the ones I mentioned, have also certification programs that you're able to become certified, where you actually have, like some of us have an MBA, et cetera. You'll have those letters behind you, CTA, VTA, so forth and so on, that helps to signify that you've gone through all the necessary steps to getting the right credentials to move forward. So it's not hard to get into the industry. I will say that it is not easy to get in. I will also say that once you get in, it's challenging at times to get what you need to be necessarily successful in the industry as well. That's probably one of the biggest things, is being able to get the resources you need to truly be successful.
Got you. Now, would you say, speaking of which, because that's a lot, for someone looking to, maybe get into that field, do you think it is a good additional stream of income, or is it something that It is, but it's very time consuming because some people are, if they're being honest with themselves, are looking for something a little more passive.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts around that for someone who might be looking to?
That's actually an awesome question because it kind of depends on, like you said, what your desire is. Are you looking for something more passive? Are you looking for something more aggressive? And are you doing it, like you said, on a part-time hobby scenario, or are you trying to make it truly a career path?
Right.
So starting with the beginning, because when I started, I was still working, full-time consulting, et cetera, and doing it on the side. But what that means, as it would be with any small business, you worked your 9 to 5, so-called 9 to 5, you worked your 9 to 5, then you come home and then you're working, your 5 to midnight or whatever the case may be. So you're putting in the time as far as that's concerned. And to your point, it is time consuming. If you do it right, it's time consuming. And the other thing is that when you start, you don't have all the automation and things in place. A lot of stuff you're doing by hand. I mean, I know when I started, I was typing up every email, doing every letter, you're mailing stuff, there's a lot to it, a lot to it. And so I think, number one, to your question, it's a great industry. Travel and tourism hospital and tourism is a great industry to be in. It has its perks to be a part of it. With that said, a lot of people think travel agents travel for free. No, we don't.
Let's go ahead and squash that now.
So you do get or can have the ability to receive some perks. Most of the industry is very much like other industries when they're giving you a bonus. You got to do something to get something. I mean, that's, nothing's for free, And so in those situations, that can parlay the benefit, because if I'm making, because I'll say from a travel agent perspective, on the average, a part-time travel agent might make about 12, 16,000 a year, maybe, because I mean, just to be honest, if you're I'll use the cruise industry as an example. Love cruising, but you got to be smart, just like you got to be smart with any industry. Got to be smart. It's about product mix. If I'm selling you, if you think about it, I see the advertisements, I can take a cruise for 5 days for $3.99. Woohoo! Okay. Well, I'm booking you a $3.99 cruise. All I get out of the deal is 10%. So all I'm getting is $30. And typically it's not $30 because a part of that cost, there are other costs that are rolled into that really are not considered. It's a part of cost of doing business. It's not really because of the product. So we're only going to get a certain percentage. Maybe I'm going to get $25 out of the situation. But yet, as a travel advisor, quite naturally, you're going to expect me to still deliver everything I would deliver for anybody else from that standpoint, and I do. So you got to be smart about your product mix and what you're working with, and what you're positioning. Our focus, our specialty, is mostly in the European market, as well as anywhere abroad, really, but more so the European market. We like to do a lot of trips in the European market, Asia, Africa, you name it. We do mostly that. There's money in the international realm. There is less money in the domestic realm, because in all honesty, again, you think about a hotel room. When somebody reaches out to me and says, I need a hotel room book, I don't book hotel rooms. Hotel rooms, literally, again, $59 a night, I get $5. I mean, really. So you got to think about what you're working with and what your niche is. And I think that's the key is, if you pick the right niche to work in and you're dedicated to it and you're learning what you need to learn about it and you are building that book of business, then yes, it can be very profitable. I know an agent, as an example, that is in a northern, northwestern state. Her sales alone for last month was $620,000 was her sales. Her commission was $89,000 for 1 month.
You made more than most people would make in a year in that month.
That's what I'm saying. So, but in her situation, she's been doing it for a good while. She has definitely a niche. She's from Italy and knows Italy like the back of her hand, and she sells Italy. So you've got to have a plan, just like with anything. You got to have the right plan and work that plan. My plan, like I said, is Europe travel, abroad travel, as well as groups. Because of course, the more people you have traveling,
Right.
the more revenue you're going to generate because you're getting something from each person.
Right.
So again, back to your original question. Yes, it's an industry that is definitely worthy. It's a great industry to work in. It's very energizing. It's ever changing. So if you're that person that likes things to change a lot, that's one thing I would say. It's a great industry. If you are a black and white person, a straight and narrow, an accountant, an actuary, things of that nature, you're probably gonna lose your mind.
Okay.
So maybe not for you.
Okay.
But generally, it's a great industry, and the money is there. You just got to, just like with any business,
anything,
gotta have a plan.
Yeah.
Gotta have a plan.
Yeah. Well, this has been a treat.
Yes.
And we thank you for taking the time to explain all this to us. And I want to say, before we ask you, where can the people find you? In lieu of a Dear Diva segment, so questions, comments, concerns, shenanigans, divaadvice@gmail.com, I want each of us to say, like, what has been your favorite travel destination that you've been to thus far? So we'll let you go first. Yes. What's been your favorite?
Oh my gosh. When I get asked that question, it's hard because every place has been my favorite for different reasons. You know, when I think about places I've been, you know, if I say in the US, like Hawaii is eye candy. It is like every color like jumps at you. The red is so red, the green is so green. It's just like such an eye candy kind of thing when you go to Hawaii. But yet when I go to Egypt is one of those things that's spiritual. It's like you're there, you're like, gosh, I'm touching the pyramids. This area was in the Bible, and this happened here. I mean, it's just it's a different wide special.
Yeah.
I go to Greece, the food, I'm not a foodie. I just eat. I'm just not a foodie. You know, just give me some food, I eat. But at Greece, the food is farm to table, and it's amazing. It is amazing. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, it's just off the chain. I don't even know what to say about it. It's a whole nother level. As I tell people, when you go to the UAE, when you definitely go to Dubai and those areas, it's like a kid going to Disney World or to some amusement park, etc. You walk in, you're like, it's just excitement, you know, because it's the tallest everything, it's the best of everything, it's It's just amazing, and it's always lively, and the nightlife is just amazing, and it's a great place to go. So I mean, so to the point, I got plenty favorites. I got a lot of favorites that I love for different reasons. You know, Paris at night. Oh. Beautiful. I mean, again, there's so many different favorites, you know, that I have that, but they're favorite for different reasons. I really can't say that one place is my overall favorite. I guess what I would say is, if I had to say that a place I've been that probably had the most pieces that made me love it, probably was Africa, to be honest, because it was historical, it was heritage, it was definitely unique and different, because when you've got a cheetah walking across in front of you, and I mean, you literally can stick your arm out and it's right there, and he's walking by you like, yeah, you see me, I'm here, you see me. I mean, it's like, that's like amazing. And when the big old elephant comes up and lets you touch his trunk, and the giraffe is, that in itself was just like, wow. Because, you know, you think about, in my case, at my age, I grew up with Wild Kingdom and all this stuff, and you're like, you would never think you're gonna ever be near any of this stuff, touching any of this stuff, you know. But then when you go and it's right there, and I mean, like I said, arm's length away, it's just like, wow. But also that root of Africa in its sense of heritage for us as African Americans, it's a whole nother level. Because it's funny, because when you say African American in Africa, they kind of look at you kind of like, what are you talking about? You're African or you're, you know, it doesn't make sense, you know. And so it's a favorite because it opened, Africa's an area that really opens your mind fully, as definitely as a minority, opens your mind fully. and makes you see the world in so many different ways at that particular point, because you start to put the puzzle pieces together a little bit better about what's been lacking from the history that we've been taught in America versus, you know, the extra pieces that haven't been taught, et cetera. So yeah, I would have to say Africa in general, for all that it has and that it gives to you, probably would have to be my favorite based on all that it does.
Gotcha.
Cool. Well, I know Egypt is on my bucket list, so I am mimicking that. Of course, you know, my favorite trip is when I went to Ghana. And for me, it was because of the experience of what I had. I was not a tourist. I went with a friend that was Guyanese, and her father was a chief. He passed away, and they installed a new chief. So I was over there, like, living in a mansion with seamstresses and cars and, you know, all the things. Like, got asked to be a wife, but I mean, you know, I was like, yeah, I can't do the third wife thing. But, you know, thank you to the other wives, Queen Mother. But you know, it was just amazing going to the funeral. It was, to me, it was nothing like. And I already loved the African culture and loved the food and everything. So, you know, I really felt like I was in Wakanda, because when they did the chief installment, like, all the townships came around to, you know, introduce to, and there was like drums and masks and dancers, and it was like these are my people, people.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome home. Like, these are my people. So it was just amazing. Like, it's the one trip I've had that I just can't bring myself to post pictures. It feels that sacred to me. Like, it was just amazing.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna do like Wanda. So domestic, the Bay or New Orleans, hands down. Abroad, I always narrow to a top 3, because I feel like the more you travel, the more you feel like cities have a vibe. So it depends on what you're going for.
Yes.
So I always list Bali and Thailand. I'm going back. I still WhatsApp my driver. Bali was more spiritual. Yeah. Thailand was just, I think, that first opening up of like, okay, this is a different culture. The things that I worry about are not even that deep. All of that, like, I think I first felt that in Thailand. I felt, it's just my personal opinion, they celebrated us more over there. I was like, oh, okay, I feel appreciated here. And then like a close third would be like maybe Barcelona. I had a good time in
Barcelona. I love Barcelona. Oh yeah.
I went on all those trips with you.
She did. This is my golden girl.
It's always good when you got somebody that will go.
That will go for real.
Exactly. Actually make the payment.
That buddy is priceless.
Because you know, you talk about going, when it's time to spend that coin, it gets real quiet.
Look, everybody, okay, yeah, let me know how much it's going to be. Let me know how much it's be. Yeah, yeah, and then when it's time to go, they're like, where'd everybody go?
I'm going to be able to get on that day.
I don't know, girl.
All right.
So, yes, this has been true. Wanda, where can the people find you?
Absolutely. All you got to do is Google Too Busy Not to Travel, and make that clear. It's the number 2.
The number 2.
Busy, not the number 2. Travel.
Right.
At Gmail. Where we live life to the fullest, completely, always.
Yes, you have the cutest
that's all you gotta do. Just Google it. You'll find us.
Yeah.
Of course, toobusynottotravel.com is the website. Too Busy at everything is
IG, Facebook, we love it. The consistency.
Yes.
And of course, we'll have her information in the show notes. We has, like I said, been a pleasure getting this information from you, and hopefully it's really useful for our audience. And if y'all are looking to travel somewhere this summer and get your Wanderlust on,
hit her up.
That's right.
All right. So in the meantime, in between time, have a great attitude.
All right. Bye.